Hey guys, tonight we step into the stiff leather boots of a person whose job title alone made peasants cross the street. Executioner. Not the gallant, black-hooded figure of legends, but the overworked, underpaid civic oddity who handles the most gruesome business no one else wants to talk about. You're not a hero. You're not even quite a villain. You're necessary. And it sucks. You stand on the edge of the village square, and all eyes are on you. Not out of admiration, no, it's more like how you'd watch someone clean out a latrine. That same mix of curiosity and repulsion. You're the town executioner now. Lucky you. The air smells of ash and boiled cabbage. You can hear a cow lowing lazily behind you, indifferent to your existential crisis. You grip your cloak tighter, not from cold, but nerves. They told you it was just a job. Swing the axe, do the deed, get paid. No one mentioned the part where children cry when they see you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where and when we're drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You didn't exactly apply for this role. More like, inherited it. In many medieval towns, executioners were picked from criminals themselves, pardoned in exchange for becoming the town's grim hand. Other times, the job was forced on you because you were related to someone who did it. Nepotism, but in reverse. Congratulations, your cousin beheaded a duke. So now you have to deal with angry mobs and flying skulls. Historians still argue whether executioners held official legal rank or were just tolerated freelancers of justice. Either way, you report to the bailiff, who avoids eye contact and gives instructions like you're a dangerous dog he's not sure is leashed. One clean cut, he mutters today. None of that sawing. Right? Because you're the one who wants a spectacle. Your first assignment? A sheep thief. Hardly the crime of the century. But local law says theft can be a capital offense if the magistrates had a bad morning, and guess what? He has. So here you are. They hand you an axe. Well, technically a worn woodsman's axe with a chip in the blade. There's no ceremonial sword, no gleaming steel. It's heavy, unbalanced, and the handle smells like mold. You try not to wince. You practice in your shed the night before on pumpkins, logs, anything you can find. But they don't squirm. They don't beg. They don't cry out for their mothers. When the thief kneels, you feel your stomach tighten. He's just a boy. Maybe 17. The priest drones on, but you can't hear it over the thumping in your chest. You're supposed to look detached, professional, but your hands tremble. The crowd jeers, not at the condemned, but at you. One woman throws a turnip. You're the necessary evil, the one who dirties their clean conscience. The axe falls. You're not sure if it was clean. It might have taken 2 swings, maybe 3. You honestly can't remember. You just know the noise, the awful wet crack thud, will echo in your head for days. Afterwards, you're handed a pouch of coins. 8 silver groats. Not bad, you think, until you realize you now have to bury the body, clean the block, and wash the blood from your boots before sunset. No one helps you. In fact, they pretend not to see you at all. You walk home past shutters that slam closed. Children stop laughing when you approach. You pass the bakery and see fresh loaves through the window, but the baker shakes his head. Closed. He mouths, even though it clearly isn't. There's no hero's welcome, just silence. You get back to your hovel at the edge of town, a small thatched thing next to the tannery where the air always smells like old meat. No one wants you in the village proper. You sit down, alone, and look at your hands. They're shaking again. Your cat, one of the few creatures that doesn't recoil at your presence, curls in your lap. You try to breathe. Did you do it right? Was the cut clean? Did he suffer? That's not in the handbook because there isn't one. They just hand you the axe and tell you to get on with it. But the truth is, execution is part performance, part punishment, and part practical necessity. You're not just killing a person. You're making a point. The town needs to see justice. It needs to feel it. Still, you wonder, what if the boy was innocent? What if he just looked guilty? What if tomorrow it's you kneeling at that block? There's no one to talk to. No therapist. No town hall debrief. Just your cat, a few groats, and the distant sound of another cow mooing as if nothing has changed. The moon rises. You lie on your straw mattress, eyes wide, listening to the wind. You think you hear footsteps, but it's probably just rats. Or ghosts. Maybe tomorrow you'll feel less hollow. Maybe. But probably not. The sun rises with a disappointing lack of drama. You half expected it wouldn't rise at all after what you did yesterday. But there it is, same gray light creeping through the warped shutters, same rooster screaming like it's auditioning for an exorcism. You don't get a day off. There's no welcome package or onboarding process. No one drops by with a fruit basket. Instead, the bailiff bangs on your door before breakfast. There's another one, he grunts, barely looking at you. This time a big man. Drunk. Killed his neighbor with a scythe. You nod. Like you've been doing this for years. You haven't. This is day 2. But there's no quitting. You're not in some cheerful medieval job fair where you can pivot to blacksmithing or beekeeping. Executioner isn't a job you get. It's one you become. And there's no turning back. So you trudge through town, avoiding the glares. Someone spits. You hear a kid whisper, "That's the headman." Like you're a monster in a bedtime story. You try to remember what it felt like to be just another face in the market, not the face associated with necks and blood. Today's job is different. The condemned man is huge, covered in tattoos that may or may not mean something. He stares at you like he's not afraid. And why should he be? You look like a baker's apprentice who took a wrong turn with an axe. You weren't trained for this. Most executioners learned by doing, which is a terrifying thought. You know that story about the headsman in 17th century Germany who kept a diary of his executions? Well, that guy had to be his own apprentice, torturer, and grave digger. You're no different. Historians still argue whether executioners ever received formal combat training, or if they simply figured out the physics of necks and steel on their own. You're figuring. You try to stay focused, but you can't help remembering something the tavern keeper's son whispered. If the axe doesn't go clean, the soul gets stuck. Superstition, probably. Still, you sharpen the blade again. This time, the crowd's bigger. Market day. More people equals more judgment. You feel their eyes judging your grip, your posture, your every twitch. You're not just taking a life. You're performing. Mess it up, and you're not just incompetent, you're cursed. The man kneels, barely. He grunts like a bull. Doesn't ask for forgiveness. Doesn't cry. You raise the axe. One swing. Almost clean. You hear the collective inhale from the crowd. That horrible silence right after the blow lands. You know you didn't quite get it in one. The body slumps weirdly. You have to strike again. Twice in 2 days. The same mistake. Your stomach knots. You finish the job quickly, but the damage is done. Not to the corpse. He's well beyond complaints, but to your reputation. A murmur spreads through the onlookers like smoke. Didn't get it clean. Again. One woman covers her child's eyes, as if your presence alone might stunt growth. You drag the body to the outskirts. They won't even bury the man in consecrated ground. That's your task now. You dig with numb hands. Your arms ache. There's mud under your nails and blood on your boots. When you finally return home, the door is ajar. Inside, someone has left something on your table. It's a rabbit, dead, its neck twisted. A message. You're being warned, do better or else. You sit down, not sure whether to laugh or vomit. The cat jumps up beside you and stares at the rabbit like it's an unexpected snack. You pet the cat absently. Guess we're both outcasts now, you mutter. In the days that follow, you begin to learn the rhythm of your new role. The bailiff doesn't call every morning, thankfully. But when he does, it's always sudden, always grim. You begin keeping your tools sharpened. You test swing your axe against firewood, then feel guilty for practicing. Like the axe is whispering, more next soon. There's no uniform, just your cloak and whatever doesn't have too much bloodstain. Sometimes you wonder what executioners wore elsewhere. In France, during the reign of Louis XVI, the famous Sanson family ran generations of executioners, men in waistcoats with clean gloves and formal bearing. You smell like fear and iron. And there are other duties, too. You learn that your job extends beyond just the execution. You sweep the scaffold. You haul away body parts. You attend the dying. And you keep the crowd entertained. The spectacle matters more than the justice. One night, you overhear a group of villagers talking about you at the tavern. "He's got soft eyes," one says. "Botched it again, did he?" Another grunts. "Should have let the pigs do it," someone else mutters. Laughter follows. You don't go inside. Instead, you wander into the woods and sit near the stream where you used to fish as a boy. You watch the water. It's moving so fast. So free. You wish you could wash your hands in it and feel something wash away. But it doesn't. The job stays on your skin. By now, you've realized a few hard truths, chief among them being that no one is going to hand you the tools of your grisly trade like you're some royal artisan. There's no elegant box of glinting steel waiting in a velvet-lined case. If you want an axe that won't bounce off someone's neck like a butter knife on bone, you're going to have to make it yourself, or at least haggle for it without getting swindled. So off you go, trudging to the blacksmith's with your borrowed blade wrapped in cloth like it's carrying the plague. The smith takes one look at you and spits, not out of disgust necessarily, but probably out of superstition. He scratches his beard and eyes your axe with a mixture of contempt and curiosity. "No balance," he grunts. "You're not splitting logs." "Wasn't my choice," you mumble. He grins a little. "Nothing is it?" You pay him with a mix of silver and favors, promising to handle a hanging for his nephew's theft case next week. That's the strange thing about your role. Everyone pretends they hate you, but suddenly you're a very useful friend to have. The axe he gives you is better. Heavier near the blade. Weighted just right. You swing it in his yard a few times, feeling how it bites into straw and wood with a satisfying thunk. It almost feels like craftsmanship. Almost. Historians still argue whether executioners were allowed to personalize their tools or if they were supposed to stick to whatever dull municipal gear was lying around. But really, what choice do you have? If you're being judged on your clean cuts, you may as well have a say in the blade that's doing the cutting. The sword comes next. Yes, a sword. Not for dueling or show, but for the higher-end clientele, nobles, heretics, the occasional pirate lord. You've heard tales of execution swords in Saxony, two-handed, broad, and unsharpened on the tip to avoid stabbing. A clean swing from the side, that's the idea. But yours? Yours is a modified bastard sword from a disused armory. You buff the rust off yourself, file the edge until it shines, and practice on melons. There's something disturbingly satisfying about the way it slices. You've also started collecting ropes. For hangings, of course. And no, there's no standard noose issued to you. You're expected to make one. Or reuse one. Which, let's be honest, doesn't feel great. Each rope starts to feel like a character in your story. Frayed, stained, and increasingly personal. You try your hand at making a gallows knot, an unpleasantly intimate process. 7 coils. Must be tied with the correct loop length, otherwise the condemned dangles too long. Or worse. Snaps too fast and ruins the lesson. You want it quick. Mostly. Depends on the crowd. You hang it from your ceiling beam and test it with a sack of grain. Then with another. The cat watches this with some concern. Or judgment. It's hard to tell with cats. You've even tried making a small block just to practice foot placement, balance, and height. You discovered early that if the block's too low, you risk glancing the axe instead of making solid contact. Too high and you lose your swing range. It's a science of inches, really. Geometry, physics, and bad luck. There's no manual for this. Just whispers, rumors, and the occasional drunken tip from someone whose cousin used to know a guy. Your home begins to look less like a cottage and more like a haunted carpenter's shop. Axes, saws, ropes, iron hooks, all neatly arranged, all carefully maintained. And yet, you can't shake the sense that it's all amateur. There's a legend, probably not true, but oddly comforting, that in Venice, some executioners had custom-forged blades etched with little flourishes, initials, sigils, even prayers. Like they were trying to purify the act through beauty. You wonder what you'd engrave if you could. Forgive me? One evening, as you clean your tools by candlelight, a boy appears at your door. Maybe 10 years old. Grimy, barefoot, eyes too old for his face. You the cutter? He asks. You nod, expecting him to bolt. But instead, he holds out a rabbit's foot. For luck, he mutters. Pa says it helped his uncle walk away from the noose. You take it. It's filthy. Smells like moss and death. But you thank him. You hang it beside the axe. Because why not? You've started sleeping with the axe beside your bed. Not for defense, oddly enough. Just comfort. Like a strange teddy bear for very damaged people. It's ridiculous, but in the moonlight it gleams like it's waiting. Or remembering. You spend your evenings testing rope tension. Studying the angle of necks. Measuring weight to drop ratios. You've read, well, heard, since few executioners read much of formulas used in the 19th century to calculate drop distance for a humane hanging. But here in your century? You're eyeballing it. Get it wrong and the head pops clean off. Or worse, it doesn't. Still, there's a kind of craftsmanship to it. You're learning something forbidden, ancient, and weirdly precise. It's not artistry exactly. But it's something. Maybe control. Maybe that's why you keep polishing your tools even after a long day. Maybe that's why you adjust the leather grip on your sword again and again, smoothing the laces, tightening the knots. Maybe it's not about them at all anymore. Maybe it's about you. You're no longer just the outsider with the blade. You're becoming proficient. And that terrifies you more than the crowd ever could. Your neighbors don't speak to you anymore. Not directly. They might not have pressed if someone's watching. But mostly, they walk wide circles around you like you're contagious. And in a way, maybe you are. Not with sickness, but with something darker. Shame, maybe? Fear. The kind that clings to your boots like graveyard mud. You didn't expect this level of isolation. Or maybe you did, but not so soon. After all, you still live in the same cottage. Still draw water from the same well. Still buy bread from the same hunched baker whose wife now spits in your direction more than she needs dough. You used to be part of the town's rhythm. Now you're its discordant note. It turns out there's a long-standing tradition of shunning the executioner. Not just here, everywhere. In medieval Switzerland, headsmen weren't allowed to walk on the same side of the road as pregnant women. In France, they couldn't enter certain taverns. And in some parts of the Holy Roman Empire, their homes were required to sit outside the village wall like lepers of the spirit. Historians still argue whether this social exclusion was driven by superstition, religious purity laws, or just a collective need to avoid eye contact with the person who decapitates your cousin. You don't need an academic paper to understand it. You feel it every day. Even your cat spends more time outside now. Children sometimes run past your house, daring each other to touch the door. One left a drawing on your stoop, a stick figure with a big red X for a face. You kept it. Not out of sentiment, but because it was surprisingly well proportioned. Even church becomes complicated. The first Sunday after your promotion, you attended Mass as usual. Sat near the back. Kept your hands folded, your head low. The priest hesitated when offering communion. His hand hovered, wafer trembling. Finally, he gave it to you, but with a look like he was feeding a wolf and hoping it had already eaten. You don't go back after that. Instead, you walk the perimeter of the graveyard at dusk, muttering old prayers you barely remember. You're not even sure who you're praying for, yourself, or the people you've helped bury. The isolation isn't just emotional. It becomes practical. Your butcher starts shorting you cuts of meat. Your firewood is late. The blacksmith's apprentice forgets your repairs. You have to trade more, offer favors, whisper promises, or just do things yourself. You try not to resent them. You tell yourself they're scared, not cruel. You remind yourself of the folk belief that executioners are cursed to absorb the guilt of every soul they take. That each swing of the axe peels off another layer of your humanity. You're starting to believe it. Then one night, a knock on your door. You freeze. It's late. Too late for commerce or neighbors. You open it slowly. A woman stands there, shawl pulled tight, eyes red from crying. She holds a chicken in her arms like it's an offering. My husband, she whispers. He's been accused. Said he stole from the granary. It's a lie. But they're saying hanging. You blink. I can't change the sentence, you say gently. She nods. I know. I wanted to ask if you'd make it quick. Please. You look at the chicken. Still alive. It clucks softly as if uncomfortable with being part of this arrangement. You nod. She sets it down. It waddles off like this is the weirdest Tuesday of its life. You close the door. You sit in silence. That's when you realize you're not just feared. You're also needed. When the worst comes, you're the last person left to ask for mercy. Not the priest. Not the judge. Not the bailiff. You. You spend that night stitching a fresh hood, simple, black, thick linen. Not for anonymity, everyone already knows who you are. But for ceremony. Dignity. Distance. It helps them, maybe even helps you. You remember reading or hearing, more likely, about a tradition in Eastern Europe where executioners wore masks shaped like beasts, wolves, ravens, horned things. Not to hide their humanity, but to displace it. To say, this isn't me doing this. This is justice. You don't have horns. Just linen. But it's something. The next day you hang the woman's husband. You do it quickly. Cleanly. No struggle. The drop is right. He dies fast. She watches from behind a cart. Doesn't scream. Doesn't sob. Just nods once like a debt has been paid. Afterward, you find a loaf of bread outside your door. Still warm. No note. The world hasn't forgiven you. But one person maybe has understood. Over time, others come. Quiet knocks. Murmured requests. Small tokens, eggs, candles, a wooden spoon with an odd face carved into the handle. They never stay to talk. No one ever says thank you. But the offerings come anyway. Your reputation shifts. Not from hated to loved, but from cursed to inevitable. Like rain. Or taxes. Or wolves in the winter. You find yourself talking to your tools sometimes. Nothing too dramatic, just a soft word to the axe as you sharpen it. A nod to the rope before coiling it. Rituals, almost. Not unlike a priest with incense. A butcher with his blade. You're no longer part of the village. But you are now part of its rhythm. And that rhythm, like your swing, never hesitates. One of the first things you notice, after the staring, the spitting, and the silent bread tributes, is how your body starts to betray you. It begins with the hands. They tremble not during the execution, oddly enough, but after. When the weight of the act finally arrives like a delayed echo in your bones. You finish the job, clean your tools, nod to the bailiff, then get home and suddenly you're pouring water into a cup and your fingers decide they no longer want to cooperate. Some nights you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling every joint in your body like they're full of rust. You try not to think about the swing that was slightly off, or the rope that didn't snap quite right, or the crowd that went too quiet afterward. But your muscles remember. They catalog it. They tighten accordingly. Historians still argue whether executioners were ever given training in anatomy. Some say yes, there are references to medieval headmen being taught where to strike to avoid bone snags or windpipe interference. Others believe most learned by trial and terrifying error. You're inclined to agree with the second camp, considering the small mountain of mistakes you're already stacking up. There's a pain in your right shoulder now. A deep one. You've started favoring your left without noticing, which throws off your swing. You adjust, then overcompensate. One bad cut and the crowd starts murmuring. One botched hanging and the sheriff glares at you like you wrote the sentence. You've also developed what could generously be called a limp. Too many hours spent standing on wet scaffold boards, your boots soaking through, the cold seeping into your ankles like regret. You try stretching. That's what the traveling Italian acrobat once told you when he dislocated his hip in the market square. Stretch or snap, he said. Then he bent backward and walked on his hands. You are not nearly as flexible. Still, you do what you can. You twist. You lunge. You groan like an old chair. There's a medieval remedy you hear about from a tanner's wife, mixing ground mustard seeds with goose fat and rubbing it into your joints. It smells like spicy death, but you try it. Doesn't help much, but at least you feel like you're doing something. Your grip strength improves though. That's one upside. Turns out holding a 6-pound axe for hours at a time builds some serious forearm muscle. You could probably crush a walnut just by thinking about it. Not exactly a party trick. But again, you don't get invited to many parties these days. Even your eyes begin to change. You start squinting more in sunlight, which makes you look even more unfriendly than you already are. You learn to read the expressions of men on the scaffold with just a glance. Panic, resignation, anger. You can tell within seconds if someone's going to fight, cry, pray, or pass out. You no longer need words, just their posture. But it's not just the physical. Your nerves shift too. You stop reacting to blood. At first, it made your stomach lurch, especially when it sprayed. But now, it's just part of the job. You start to notice other things instead. The slight hitch in a man's breath just before the fall. The way the crowd gasps in unison like a single creature with one huge mouth. You've even stopped flinching when people call you butcher. At this point, you've heard it so often it sounds like a nickname. You catch yourself responding to it once at market. You're not proud of that. And then there's the fatigue. Not the kind you sleep off. The deeper kind, the one that settles into your bones like a long winter. You sleep more, but it helps less. You find yourself standing still for long stretches of time, staring at nothing in particular. You forget to eat. Or eat too much. There's no pattern. Just drift. There's a kind of executioner in German folklore who, after 50 hangings, supposedly turns into a spirit with no shadow. Just a walking curse. No warmth, no rest, no aging. Some say it's punishment. Others say it's mercy. Either way, you feel like you're halfway there. You try to stay functional. You keep your tools sharp. You clean your boots. You sweep your tiny porch like the act might sweep something out of your soul too. You develop little rituals to keep yourself sane. 1. You always light a candle before dawn even if it's already bright out. 2. You keep a small carved figure in your pocket, a little owl gifted by a dying prisoner who said it would watch over you. 3. You whisper the names of those you've executed once a week. Not out of guilt, but out of duty. Someone should remember. If not you, then who? Occasionally, you try to talk to the bailiff about it, offhand comments, not real confessions. He usually shrugs and changes the subject. One time, though, after a particularly grim triple hanging, he says, "You think too much. That's your problem. Try drinking more." You do. It helps a little. But mostly, you rely on your body doing what it must. Like a soldier. Like a mill wheel. Turning whether it wants to or not. There's no one to nurse you when the shoulder pain flares. No one to press a cool cloth to your forehead when you've caught a fever after standing for hours in the rain, waiting for a sentence to arrive. You tend yourself like a mule with hands. You stitch your own blisters, pop your own splinters, bind your knees with cloth soaked in vinegar and sage. And each time you wonder, how long can I do this? Not because you want to stop, but because you don't know what would stop you. The job goes on. The names change, the crimes vary, but your role doesn't. You are the hinge on which justice swings, and your body, battered though it may be, is the door. Creaks, cracks, but it still opens. You always assumed the worst part of being an executioner would be the moment of execution. The breath before the drop, the crowd's held silence, the final jolt of the rope or the thump of the axe. But over time you realize, it's the waiting, and not just waiting for the sentence to come down. It's the ritual of it all, the drawn-out procession, the paperwork, the pageantry of punishment. It's like death has a schedule and you've become its most punctual clerk. Most days, you sit by the courthouse, polishing iron restraints while someone inside debates whether Thomas the Miller really did steal 2 chickens or just borrowed them forever. Once the verdict is handed down, the sheriff informs you like he's ordering bread. Execution in 3 days. Noon. Then it begins. The grim parade. The prisoner is placed in a cell. You check the scaffold. Inspect the block. Test the rope. If it's hanging, you measure. The drop must be precise. Too short and it chokes them slowly. Too long and it rips the head clean off. Neither outcome looks good in front of a crowd. You've learned to measure by eye now. A sort of morbid intuition. One glance and you know this man needs a drop of 7 feet, maybe 8 if he's wiry. You factor in weight, muscle, height like tailoring a suit. Except it's the last one they'll ever wear. The public nature of executions adds another layer. You're not just doing a job, you're performing one. And the stage is always set the same, a scaffold in the town square, often erected overnight by men who never look you in the eye. They build it like you might curse their lumber if they dare speak. You remember once, years ago, watching a hanging as a child. It was part of a festival. There was music beforehand. Sausages. A puppet show. The executioner came out in black, stern and faceless. Everyone went quiet. You clutched your father's hand. He whispered, "This is justice." You didn't understand then how much of it was theater. You do now. And like any play, there's a script. The condemned is brought forth. If they confess, the priest gives them absolution. If they don't, the crowd murmurs, hungry for punishment. You stand still, tools in hand, the embodiment of inevitability. Sometimes the criminal is defiant, screaming curses at the crowd, blaming the judge, spitting on the priest. Other times they collapse with fear, legs buckling, tears streaming, soiling themselves. You've seen it all. At this point, the performance doesn't change you, but it changes the crowd, because the audience matters more than anyone admits. Historians still argue whether medieval executions were truly for justice or for deterrence or, more darkly, for entertainment. After all, why else schedule them for market day? Why else sell pies nearby and bring the kids? If it were only about justice, wouldn't it be quiet? You wonder as you look into the eyes of the watching crowd how many are here because they want to learn a lesson and how many just want a break from the crushing boredom of daily life. And then comes your moment. Everything slows. You raise the axe, or you release the lever, or you wrap the cord. Depends on the sentence. But it's always the same beat, the same silence just before the end. And then it's done. But not really, because then comes the cleanup. No one talks about that part. They think you swing and walk away. In truth, you stay until the blood is mopped, the body removed, the platform scrubbed enough for the next round. Sometimes you bury them. Sometimes you deliver them to family. Once, you had to cart a decapitated corpse out of town because no one would take it. You left it at a crossroads. Let the crows decide. There's also the matter of the last words. People assume the condemned always give grand speeches. Some do. Most don't. You've heard everything from poetry to gibberish to desperate gasping prayers. One man recited the ingredients to a pie crust recipe. Another shouted for his mother. One woman looked at you and whispered, "I forgive you." That one stuck. You still dream about her sometimes. As for your own lines, you have a few phrases you use. May God have mercy. It is time. Sometimes just a nod. You find saying less feels kinder. But of course, the crowds don't always want kind. They want closure, or vengeance, or noise. If things go wrong, if the axe glances or the rope slips or the body jerks too long, they start murmuring, then yelling. Once they threw stones. You didn't flinch. You couldn't, because the show must go on. Some towns have a designated platform that stays up year-round. Others build and dismantle it every time, as though pretending it's a temporary evil. You prefer the permanent ones. Less creaking, more stability, though it does mean children grow up seeing it every day. One girl once asked you if she could play on it when no one was using it. You didn't know how to answer. You told her to ask her mother. You still don't know if that was the right thing to say. But it's not just the logistics. It's the anticipation. The 3 days between sentence and swing are the hardest for everyone. For the prisoner, obviously. For the town who whispers and watches. And for you who prepares. You run the scene in your head over and over. You check your tools obsessively. You find yourself gripping the handle of the axe too tightly. You dream of it misfiring. You dream of standing on the scaffold and your arms simply refusing to move. Of the prisoner turning and asking, "Why are you doing this?" And you have no answer. That's the part no one sees. They see the swing. They don't see the waiting. They see the moment. They don't see the pacing, the sleepless nights, the hours you spend sitting on a stool, staring at your boots, wondering how to carry the weight of justice while still remembering how to live. Because the rhythm of execution isn't just physical, it's emotional. It takes a piece of you each time, and the in-between is when you notice what's missing. The in-between is where the rot sets in. And the next performance is always just around the corner. You're not sure exactly when the bribes began. Probably around the 5th or 6th execution. At first, they came quietly, coins wrapped in cloth, passed under tables, left inside your boot like a reverse offering from a guilt-ridden deity. They were always paired with a whisper. Make it quick. Let him suffer. Turn your back during the prayer. You never asked for them, but they never stopped. Soon, you realize being an executioner isn't just a job, it's a currency. You deal in fear, in reputation, in the quiet calculations of desperate families trying to shave a second off their loved one's suffering, or add a few if they feel wronged enough. One man paid you with a golden ring to tighten the noose so it crushed the windpipe. He wanted his brother to die fast. Another gave you a bottle of brandy to let his cousin scream out his final innocence before you swung. As if words could undo fate if only shouted loud enough. The worst was a mother. She brought you a blanket. Hand-stitched. Smelled like lavender and firewood. She said it was for your shoulders in winter. Then she looked you in the eye and said, "Don't let him cry. Please." She didn't say her son's name. She didn't have to. Historians still argue how much power executioners really had. Some say it was purely ceremonial, orders came from above and you were just the blade. Others point to records of executioners altering methods, taking payments, making judgments on the edge of official permission. You suspect the truth is both. Like all things human and uncomfortable. There were limits, of course. You couldn't refuse to do the job. That was a death sentence in itself. But you could tilt it ever so slightly. Change the weight of the moment. Let a prisoner speak a few seconds longer. Sharpen the axe just that bit extra. Use a newer rope instead of the frayed one. Power, in your position, wasn't loud. It whispered. And whispers came with cost. The first time someone threatened you, it was because you didn't take a bribe. The victim's uncle, wealthy, drunk, red-faced, cornered you outside the tavern and hissed, "He died too clean." That wasn't justice. That was mercy. You'll regret that. You didn't respond. You just walked home faster that night. After that, you kept a small knife in your boot. Not for the prisoners. For the living. It's a strange thing, to be feared by the condemned but hunted by the grieving. Your home, sparse as it is, starts to feel less like a refuge and more like a target. You begin sleeping with one eye open. You bolt the door. You board the windows. You get a dog. Ugly little mutt with a bark like a shriek. You name him Justice. Of course you do. The bribes continue. Sometimes they come in kind, sacks of grain, salted meat, a bundle of fresh leeks with a note tucked inside. Please end it quickly. The handwriting always shakes. One man tried to give you a chicken. A live chicken. You took it because you were hungry. That night it laid an egg. You stared at it for a long time before eating it raw. Other times, the bribes are more subtle. Influence. Promise of protection. A friend in the city who might speak on your behalf. Not all favors are paid in coins, but each one leaves a mark. You begin to see the faces of those who asked you for favors more clearly than those you executed. It's their guilt that lingers, not your own. You try to draw lines. You say to yourself, only if it's mercy. But mercy is a slippery thing. What feels kind one day feels cruel the next. A slow strangling might mean less agony for one, but more shame for their family. A swift blow could be seen as too forgiving. Even kindness in this world can be corrupted. And then there are the offers you must refuse. A priest once asked you to fake a hanging. Said the man was innocent. Tie the rope loose. Let him fall and rise again. I'll smuggle him out before anyone knows. You stared at him for a long time. Then you said no. He never spoke to you again. You still wonder whether you should have said yes. There's no one to ask, of course. No one you can confide in. You don't have a guild. You're not a blacksmith. You're not a baker. You're the man who kills people and is paid to not talk about it. So you keep it inside. You start carving again small figures from leftover wood. You line them on your windowsill, a knight, a cat, a boy with no face. One day you carve a hangman's noose only to smash it immediately. Justice barks. You stare out the window for a long time after that. Bribes teach you something odd. People think they can buy peace. Or punishment. That suffering can be adjusted like the hem of a tunic. That you hold the needle. You don't. You hold the scissors. But no one wants to hear that. They want to believe there's still a chance. A coin's weight can tip the scale. That's why they offer, even when you refuse. Hope is the last crime committed before the execution. Once, a prisoner offered you a bribe himself. Just before the axe. He said, make it slow. I deserve it. You did the opposite. You made it clean. You never told anyone. But you remember his eyes. They thanked you as the world slipped away. Some nights, you run your hands through your coin pouch, feeling the bribes rattling inside. You don't spend them. You keep them in a box. Locked. Hidden. Not because you're noble, but because you don't want to know what those coins might buy. It begins as a whisper. A sideways glance in the market. Someone shifts their basket as you pass, like your shadow might spoil the fruit. Children stop mid-laugh when you round the corner. Even the town drunk calls you that black-hooded crow. You are not welcome. Not exactly feared. Just not belonging. This is the slow rot of stigma. At first, you think you're imagining it. After all, you've done nothing wrong. The law gave you this role. The town council pays you. You are part of the machine. But slowly, the edges fray. Invitations to feasts never arrive. Your chair at the tavern goes mysteriously missing. A girl you once danced with at midsummer now crosses the road when she sees you. She doesn't meet your eye. In medieval Europe, executioners often lived at the margins, both legally and socially. Some were even forced to live outside town gates or wear specific colors. Others were barred from marriage within the community. Your town isn't so strict, but the message is clear: you're useful but untouchable. You try to laugh it off. You make jokes to the baker, careful, or I'll bring the axe next time your bread burns. He chuckles too quickly. It doesn't reach his eyes. One day, you offer to help fix a neighbor's fence after a storm. They politely decline. That night, you see them doing it alone, struggling with bent nails and crooked planks. It would have taken you 10 minutes. But your hands are not wanted on their land. You begin to shrink. You walk quicker. Speak less. Keep your eyes on the ground. And you start forgetting how to talk like a person. At meals, you catch yourself chewing silently in rhythm like a drumbeat from the scaffold. You sleep in your boots. Your dreams are quiet now, just the sound of a crowd breathing in unison, waiting. Historians still argue how much of this stigma was self-imposed. Did executioners isolate themselves for safety, or did society shun them from the start? Was it law or custom? You think it was both. A dance of mutual revulsion. Even when you're needed, no one looks at you directly. They address you sideways, like you're a bad omen made flesh. A few brave souls speak plainly: the innkeeper who gives you stale bread, the gravedigger who nods once when you pass. He understands. His world also begins and ends with silence. You start visiting the forest more. It's quieter there. No stairs. Just the wind and the birds and the occasional fox that looks at you without judgment. You build a little bench near a stream and carve initials into it. Not your own. Just letters that feel like company. Sometimes you speak aloud there. Tell jokes to the trees. Share memories with the moss. One time you sing. You sound like someone else. Someone who still belonged. And then there's the church. That's the worst. Because the priest hesitates when offering you communion. He says it's not him, it's the rules. You're still pure in God's eyes, I'm sure, he mutters, but he places the wafer in your palm like it might bite him. You stop going after that. You try not to mind. After all, you knew this would come. But it eats away. Not like hunger. More like rust. The worst part? You start believing them. You catch your reflection in water and flinch. You keep your hood up longer than necessary. You walk differently. Less like a man. More like a function. You meet a woman once, she's new to town, doesn't know your title yet. She talks to you. Smiles. It feels like breathing after being underwater. You help her carry a bundle of firewood. She laughs when you slip. It's real. You think maybe this could be something. A week later, she finds out who you are. She doesn't say anything. She just stops smiling. You carry your own firewood after that. Some towns tried to protect their executioners. Gave them perks, free meals, tax exemptions, even exclusive fishing rights. Little ways of saying, we know you're necessary, even if we pretend we don't like it. You've received none of these. Only whispers and space. You once asked the mayor if there'd ever been a festival celebrating justice. He looked at you like you'd asked to dance naked on the altar. We don't celebrate death, he said. But they do, don't they? They cheer. They eat. They sing songs after an execution. They go home and sleep better, knowing the bad man is gone. And yet you, the vessel through which that justice passes, are the one who must stay awake, peeling yourself off the memory of another death. So you become something else. You lean into the role. You walk slower, talk less. You make your voice deeper, your movements measured. You become the executioner they fear, because if they won't let you be human, you may as well be myth. It's easier that way. You adopt little rituals. A sharp nod before each job. A whispered word to the condemned, even if they can't hear. You wear the same gloves every time. You don't wash the blood out immediately. Let it dry. Let it speak. Once you scare off a group of boys throwing stones at a stray dog. They run like you're death itself. You stare at the dog. It stares back, then trots away without a sound. You wish you could follow. And then one market day, a boy walks up to you. Can't be more than 6. He looks up and says, "Is it true you kill monsters?" You don't know what to say, so you nod. He beams. "Good," he says. "There's one under my bed." You crouch, smile just enough, and whisper, "Tell it I'm watching." He nods solemnly and runs off. It's the first time you've felt useful in months. The boy doesn't flinch, because children haven't learned to be afraid of you yet. They just see someone big and quiet who maybe, just maybe, keeps monsters away. You hold on to that moment. Tuck it somewhere safe. Because in a world that turns from you, even a single point of light feels like redemption. You don't remember the first dream. It might have been about the gallows swaying in the wind with no one there, or maybe a man with no face silently mouthing prayers while you fumble with your gloves. What you do remember is the feeling, a slow, cold dread that coils in your gut like a knotted rope. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. At first, it's the expected stuff. The faces. The begging. The strange, guilty laughter your brain invents and inserts just before you wake up. One dream plays on a loop, someone turning to face you right before the axe drops, but it's your own face looking back. You wake drenched in sweat, gasping. The dog, Justice, whines beside your bed. He's the only soul who knows your name anymore, and you haven't said it aloud in weeks. As time passes, the dreams become stranger. They stop being about specific executions and start bleeding into your daily world. You dream of rope hanging from the trees outside your house. You dream of your axe whispering your name. You dream of a town with no people, only gallows in every square, as if the buildings themselves were sentenced. Quirky detail, some medieval executioners believed that nightmares were spirits of the damned trying to claw their way back through your conscience. So they'd sleep with blessed tokens under their pillows or with salt circles drawn around the bed. You try it once, sprinkling dried herbs near your door like the wise woman in the woods told you to. You sleep worse that night. Historians still argue whether executioners truly believed in curses and spirits, or if it was just a way to explain the creeping madness. But what else could it be when you wake with your hands clenched into fists, nails digging bloody half-moons into your palms? Your days are affected too. You become forgetful, not of facts, but of emotions. You can't remember the last time you laughed, not out of courtesy, but out of genuine surprise. You avoid mirrors. You eat less. You try reading the Bible aloud before bed, but even that starts sounding like execution orders. You try distractions. You begin carving again, obsessively. Small animals, mostly. A bird with no eyes. A goat with broken horns. Once, you carve a hooded figure and snap it in two. The pieces stay on your table for weeks. You tell yourself it's just part of the job. Everyone has stress. You're not cursed, just tired. But then one night, you wake up standing outside. Barefoot. No memory of how you got there. Justice is barking frantically, trying to herd you back inside. That's the night you stop sleeping. Not altogether, of course. The body always sneaks in a few minutes here and there. But you no longer let yourself sleep. You fight it. You drink strong tea. You pace. You mutter aloud to stay awake. You keep candles burning because the dark feels too much like a trapdoor. And when you do nod off, it's never soft. It's like falling into a trap. Snap, you're there again. The scaffold. The crowd. But they're not watching the condemned. They're watching you. Silent. Expectant. Sometimes your mother is in the dream. She asks what happened to her sweet boy. Sometimes she's holding your old wooden sword. The one you used to pretend was Excalibur. She drops it in front of you. Says nothing. You don't sleep the next night. Or the next. Eventually, your hands start shaking. You miss a notch while sharpening your axe. The blade nicks your thumb. You don't feel it at first. Just watch the blood bead up. Red as judgment. You begin walking more, trying to exhaust yourself. You pace the edge of the woods. You count steps. You hum the same melody your father used to whistle when mending shoes. It's the only tune that doesn't set your teeth on edge. You speak aloud to the condemned now, not just before death, but afterward. A strange little ritual, whispered under your breath as you clean your tools. Go easy. Find peace. Leave me be. It helps. A little. There's a healer in the next town rumored to have sleep stones. Smooth river rocks enchanted to draw bad dreams into themselves. You trade 2 silver coins and a loaf of bread for one. You keep it under your pillow. You sleep 3 hours that night. Feels like a miracle. But the dreams return. This time, they're not even about death. They're about the moments before. The condemned's shoes. The way they clutch a token, a ring, a piece of fabric, a coin. The small human things that made them real. That's what haunts you most now, the ordinary. You start journaling even though you can't let anyone read it. Just lists, mostly. Names. Dates. What they wore. What they said. You convince yourself it's for record keeping. A ledger of lives ended. But sometimes you slip in a memory. He smiled as he walked up. She sang under her breath. He asked me if I believed in forgiveness. You never answered him. Once you read that the ancient Egyptians had a saying, to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again. You wonder if that's what you're doing, writing down names to tether them to the world so they don't return in dreams. Or maybe you're just scared they already have. The townspeople start to notice your decline. You hear whispers that you've gone soft. That maybe you're touched. Some even say you're cursed and shouldn't be allowed near their children. You see the mayor avoiding your gaze at the festival. Your payment pouch feels lighter than usual. You don't argue. You just walk home and stare at the axe for a long time. Then something shifts. One night, a condemned man turns to you and says, "You look more tired than I do." It isn't cruel, just true. You almost laugh. Later that night, you do. A small, strange laugh. Alone. In the dark. Feels good. You start allowing yourself one dream per week. Just one. You say it aloud before bed. Like a prayer. One dream. That's it. It helps set the boundary. Most nights, you still fight it. But on that one night, you let it come. And slowly, over time, the dreams soften. They don't disappear, but they shift. One is just your childhood home. Another is your father carving shoes. One features you sitting by the river watching geese. You still wake up stiff and sore, but less hollow. Sleep will never be restful again. But at least now it is not war. You've done everything right, or at least everything required. You show up, clean your tools, perform the sentence. You don't talk too much. You don't drink too much. You certainly don't ask questions. That's the part that people forget. Being a medieval executioner isn't just about the blood, it's about the paperwork. Or, well, the parchment. Every death is documented. Not by you, of course, you're not that important, but by scribes, clerics, judges. Sometimes you glimpse the ledgers, blocky Latin, spidery names, margins stained with candle wax, or worse. The details are clinical. Time of death. Cause. Crimes committed. Your name rarely appears. Just execution carried out. No flourish. No sentiment. Except when there's a mistake. You remember your first botched execution like a broken tooth you can't stop tonguing. It was supposed to be a clean hanging, rope, gallows drop, but the knot was off. Too high. Instead of snapping the neck, it just slowly strangled the man. Kicking. Thrashing. Long minutes. The crowd grew quiet, then restless. A few people turned away. One woman sobbed. You wanted to cut him down and end it quick, but protocol froze you. The law said it must be seen through. Afterward, the body was still twitching when the constable patted your shoulder and said, "Next time, check your measure." You went home and vomited until your ribs ached. Even now, years later, the sound of rope creaking makes your spine flinch. Every time you walk the gallows, you double-check the noose like a man obsessed. Botches happen, even to the best. Ask any headsman: an axe that glances, a sword that catches bone, a drop that doesn't drop. Once, in another town, the blade snapped entirely. The condemned just stood there blinking while the crowd gasped. They gave the executioner a new blade and made him finish the job. The crowd clapped afterward. Like it was theater. Historians still argue about how common these errors were. Records are vague, often sanitized. Some claim botches were rare and overblown by later writers looking for drama. Others insist they were all too frequent, with inexperienced or untrained executioners making mistakes at horrifying cost. You know the truth. One miscalculation, one bad swing, one distraction. That's all it takes. And the guilt lingers. The worst was the boy. He wasn't a boy, really 16, maybe 17. Stole bread, a few coins, hit a guard on the way out. That made it a capital offense. You begged the judge to reconsider. Not directly, of course, that would have been improper. But you dropped hints, asked more questions than usual, suggested he was small, thin, might not fall clean. The judge shrugged. Let God sort him. You measured carefully. You tied the rope yourself. You triple-checked everything. Still went wrong. The boy's foot caught the edge of the platform. It broke his fall just enough to slow the drop. You saw the light leave his eyes inch by inch. The mother's scream haunts you still. You sharpened your tools for hours that night. Not because they were dull. Because it gave your hands something to do besides tremble. After that, you began requesting sword executions instead of hangings when possible. Cleaner. More control. Less chance of incidents. The townspeople noticed. They started calling you the Blade. At first it was just a nickname. Now it's almost a title. You don't know how to feel about that. Even when things go well, it doesn't mean clean. The body still twitches. The blood still pools. And the crowd still wants a show. Yes, the crowd. Let's talk about them. You used to think they'd be your worst critics. Now you realize they're your most reliable fans. They come early, pack the square. Some bring food. Children sit on shoulders. Vendors sell meat pies. It's an event. There's a buzz. The kind of energy you'd expect at a joust or miracle play. People chat about your technique. Did you see that drop? Clean work. Bet he sharpens his blade with ash oil. He barely even blinked. It's nauseating, but also a validating. You'd never say it aloud, but sometimes you care what they think. Sometimes you pause a second longer before the strike. Let the moment hang. Give them the drama they crave. It disgusts you, but you've learned that playing the role keeps things smoother, less panic, less outrage, more distance. Quirky fact. In some towns, executioners were judged not just on efficiency, but style. A steady hand and theatrical timing could earn cheers. There are even records of condemned prisoners tipping their executioners for a quick death. Imagine that, being tipped for killing someone well. Your hands shake less now, but your stomach still turns. You've learned to hide it. Deep breaths, steady stance, gloves on tight, but you still dread the moments after. That lingering silence before the crowd disperses. The thud of the body being taken down. The way no one looks at you until you're gone. After the botched hanging, someone left a note on your door. No signature. Just 3 words: you made him suffer. You burned it. Then swept the ashes into the hearth. Then washed your hands until the skin peeled. And yet here you are. Still doing it. Still showing up. Because who else will? There's no training school for executioners. No apprenticeships. Most learn on the job or inherit the post. You didn't choose it. It chose you. And now you carry every mistake like a second shadow. Even Justice, your dog, seems quieter lately. He sleeps curled by the door like a sentinel. Some nights he growls at nothing. You light an extra candle. Maybe it's ghosts. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's the knowledge that the next job could be another slip-up, another sleepless night. You try not to think about it. But when you close your eyes, you still see the boy. And the rope. And the judge saying, "Let God sort him." And you wonder, what if God's not watching? The rain is unrelenting today, thick, gray sheets that muffle the world into a dull hush. You pull your hood tighter, though it doesn't help much. Water seeps into your collar, down your back, into your boots. The gallows creak louder when it rains. Everything smells like wetwood and old iron. Even Justice, your dog, refuses to follow you this morning. He just watches from under the eaves, ears low, tail still. You don't blame him. Today is a special occasion. Not a common thief or wayward apprentice. No. Today's condemned is a nobleman. A real one, land, title, and all. Caught conspiring against the local lord. Treason. High stakes. High tension. And most of all, high ceremony. Executions for the nobility are a strange, strained business. They're not held in the square like common criminals. They're private, solemn, controlled. You remember your first one. Fewer people, but more pressure. More eyes that matter. Nobles don't scream. They give speeches. This one, he's a cousin to the Baron. Clean-shaven, steady voice, clothes still fine even after days in the jail. He'll be beheaded, of course, no hanging for a noble. And not with the axe either. They've requested the sword. The execution must be dignified. There's an audience of 8 today. 8 too many. 2 knights, 3 clerics, 1 high steward, and 2 scribes. You count them quickly out of habit before you step forward. The noble meets your eye. No fear. Just the faintest edge of contempt. You're beneath him even now. Maybe especially now. You lay out the cloth. The blade rests across it, gleaming despite the gloom. You oiled it twice this morning. Sharpened it with the care of a man polishing his own reflection. There's a ritual to these things. The noble reads from a small parchment. A few lines about loyalty, God, and injustice. The steward reads a reply. You listen barely. Your mind is already in motion, position, wind, stance, follow-through. No mistakes today. Because here's the catch, when you execute nobility, there's no room for error. One botch, and it's not just your reputation on the line, it's your life. Nobles don't forgive sloppiness. They punish it. Historians still argue whether executioners were paid more for noble deaths or just expected to rise to the occasion out of fear. In some cases, they were even given gifts from the condemned's family if the blow was clean. A twisted bonus system. Your hands are dry now, despite the rain. Your heartbeat slow? Calm. He kneels. No rope. No panic. You raise the blade. The moment stretches, bends, breathes. Then one clean stroke. It's over. There's a pause. You always listen for it. That small vacuum of silence before everyone exhales. The steward nods. The knights turn away. The scribes scribble. You wipe the blade. Fold the cloth. Step back. No one claps, of course. This isn't the square. You leave quietly, your boots squelching in the mud. Later that day, a servant delivers a parcel to your door. Inside, a gold ring, a folded note, and a small bottle of honeyed brandy. The note reads simply, for your precision. L. You place the ring in a drawer. You drink the brandy. You do not sleep. The noble's face lingers in your dreams, dignified, pale, oddly serene. You keep wondering if he wanted it that way. If death, clean and fast, was better than living in disgrace. Or maybe he just trusted you more than he trusted his cousin. You wonder what that says about the world. Quirky fact, in some European cities, highborn prisoners were allowed to choose their executioner from among a list. It was considered a final dignity to select the person who would end your life. Executioners competed in a way. Reputation mattered. Yours is growing. A letter arrives from another town addressed only to the blade. They ask if you'd consider traveling for a particularly delicate case. High profile. High reward. Travel expenses paid. You burn the letter. You've had enough of noble necks and folded notes. Still, the requests keep coming. One day, a woman arrives at your door, finely dressed and flanked by guards. She offers you coin. A lot of it. Says her husband has disgraced their name. She wants it done quietly, discreetly, professionally. You tell her you're not a salesword. She doesn't argue. Just drops the coin pouch on your step and walks away. You leave it there for 3 days before finally picking it up. You don't spend it. Instead, you hide it beneath the floorboards, like it might vanish on its own. The line between justice and murder starts to blur, and you realize that executing nobility, while rare, changes everything. The weight, the audience, the aftermath. It doesn't make you more respected, just more visible. And visibility is dangerous. So you return to the hangings, the thieves, the gamblers and heretics, the drunks who said the wrong thing at the wrong time. It's grim, but at least it's familiar. You know how to survive this level of hatred. The upper crust? That's a different game. Polished, poisoned, heavy with unspoken consequences. You start turning down out-of-town offers. Politely at first, then more bluntly. Your hands want simplicity, routine, something predictable in this chaotic little corner of the world. But you know it can't last. Nobility doesn't forget, especially when you've held their life in your hands. You just hope they remember your precision. The days blur together now, soft and gray, like fog drifting through an empty field. You've been in this role long enough to recognize the rhythm. There's a lull after noble executions. People get quiet. Even the usual squaregoers seem uneasy. It's as if brushing too close to power makes them remember that death isn't just for thieves and outcasts. It can happen to anyone. So for a few days, no one dies. Or rather, no one officially dies. You use the time to mend your coat, sharpen your tools, sweep the hearth. Justice naps by your feet, twitching in sleep. You think about nothing. Or try to. But of course, the quiet doesn't last. A knock at your door. A summons. This one's complicated. It's a heresy trial. Now heretics are a whole different category. They're not just breaking laws, they're breaking faith. Or so the church says. And in medieval Europe, that means their punishment must be exemplary. Today, you're not just an executioner. You're a cautionary tale. The accused is a man in his 40s, thin as reeds, with a sunken face and a voice like splinters. A traveling preacher. Said the wrong things in the wrong village. Claimed the saints were liars, that the Pope was a tyrant, that the end times had already come and gone. That sort of thing. He's already been tortured, of course. That's how these things go. The church doesn't like to be uncertain. You're told he's confessed. You're also told the execution must be public, and here's the worst part, symbolic. So they've built a platform in the square. Not a gallows. A pyre. You've never enjoyed burnings. Not because they're gruesome, though they are. Not even because they're slow, which they often are. It's the crowd. The way they cheer. They call it cleansing. A holy flame. But to you, it smells like cooked leather and fear. You prepare the pyre yourself. Stack the wood, arrange the ropes, double-check the kindling. You've learned to do this part alone. When others help, things go wrong, either too much wood, too little, or stacked so badly it collapses mid-burn. There's an art to it. You hate that you know it. Historians still argue whether executioners took pleasure in burnings or merely endured them. Some say executioners of heretics were handpicked for their loyalty to the church, others claim they were just the regulars doing another messy job. No one really knows because no one ever asked you. The man is led out in chains. He doesn't speak, doesn't plead, just looks at you like he already knows you're not in control of this any more than he is. The church official gives a long speech. Words like blasphemy and redemption and purify swirl around you like smoke before the fire even begins. When they signal you, you step forward and do your part, secure the ropes, light the flame. The rest unfolds slowly. Too slowly. You don't watch. Not anymore. You learn that after the second one. Instead, you focus on the ground, on the edge of your blade, on the way the wind shifts. But the sound that you can't block out. Crackling, hissing, screaming. Always the screaming. Some claim that the truly faithful don't scream. That God gives them grace in their final hour. You've never seen that happen. Later that night, you strip your clothes at the door and leave them outside. Justice won't go near you until you've washed. You sit in the basin, scrubbing until your fingers are red and raw. And still, the smell clings to your nose like guilt. The next morning, someone leaves flowers on your doorstep. Lilies. You don't know who sent them. You toss them in the fire. Quirky fact. In certain towns, burnings of heretics were followed by feasts. Not state feasts, community ones. As if witnessing death together forged some kind of unity. It's possible people just wanted something to eat after hours in the cold. But still, strange how often food follows flames. You eat alone that night. Bread, cheese, wine. The simple kind. The quiet kind. You wonder if the man deserved it. Not legally, that's above your station, but really, you remember what he said to the bishop right before they gagged him. God speaks in silence. What does that mean? It sticks with you. You begin noticing the silences more. The gaps between footsteps. The hush of early dawn. The absence of laughter on execution days. You start walking outside the village more. Into the woods. Past the orchard. Justice runs ahead, tongue lolling, chasing squirrels he'll never catch. One evening, you stumble upon a stone circle. Old, worn down. Maybe a druid site. Maybe just farmer superstition. You sit there a while. Not praying. Just listening. For silence. And you wonder, what if he was right? What if the end times already came? What if you missed them? What if they looked a lot like now? The next heretic is scheduled for the stocks instead of fire. Less spectacle. More punishment. You breathe easier. But not much. You've learned that the church, like the nobles, has long memory and short patience. And that heresy in the medieval world isn't just dangerous. It's contagious. That makes you the cure. Or the symptom. Hard to say anymore. The early frost has arrived. You can see it glittering on the rooftops like powdered glass. It crunches beneath your boots as you walk, biting into your soles with every step. Winter is the season of stillness, but for you it brings something else, backlog. Executions don't stop for snow. In fact, this is when they multiply. The prisons overflow. The cold doesn't slow crime, it stirs it. Hunger turns good men bad. Desperation does the rest. You see more petty theft, more brawls, more accidental murders over crusts of bread. They round up the usual suspects, and the town officials call you in more often. They try to be cheerful about it. One even jokes, cold weather's good for clean cuts, eh? You don't laugh. Today's task is a double hanging brothers, maybe. Or cousins. You're not sure. The guards say they robbed a spice merchant and killed his son. It sounds plausible. But it's winter, and you know how easily accusations freeze solid before anyone has time to melt them open. You arrive early to inspect the gallows. Rope tight, beam steady. Platform swept clear of frost. You've learned that in winter, even though it stiffens, things break easier. People too. As you prep the ropes, a boy approaches. 12, maybe 13. Wrapped in thin wool. Cheeks pink with cold. He stands at the edge of the square, watching. You nod at him, curious. Most children stay away from executions. He doesn't speak, just stares. When you look back again, he's gone. Later, someone tells you he's the merchant's youngest son. The one who didn't die. You wonder if he came to see justice or revenge. The brothers don't beg. They stand quietly, almost respectfully. One says a prayer under his breath. The other just looks skyward, maybe searching for forgiveness in the clouds. You do your job cleanly. The crowd doesn't cheer. Not in winter. It's too cold for celebration. Historians still argue whether winter executions were deliberately scheduled to discourage crowds, or whether they simply had to continue regardless of the season. Some accounts say the harshness was intentional, that colder weather made for better discipline. Others suggest it was purely bureaucratic. Crime doesn't hibernate, so neither can punishment. Either way, you keep working, and the days get darker. By mid-December, you've done 11 executions in 2 weeks. A record even for you. Your hands ache from the cold. The ropes freeze stiff. Once, the trapdoor stuck, and you had to cut the cord manually, your fingers numb and clumsy. Took 3 tries. That night, you don't eat. Justice curls up at your side, offering what little warmth he can. You bury your face in his fur and whisper something. You don't even know what. The next morning, the town clerk brings a surprise. A clemency order. One of the condemned has been spared. A noble lady intervened, said the man was her cousin's stable boy and had been wrongly accused. You wonder if it's true or just convenient. Still, you don't ask questions. One less name on your list. A small mercy. Quirky fact, some medieval towns had mercy wheels where condemned prisoners could spin for a chance at clemency, literally gambling with their lives. It was a crude mix of spectacle and superstition and only rarely honored. Still, the hope was enough to keep crowds entertained. Your town has no mercy wheel. Just you. And the ledger. By winter's midpoint, you stop noticing the cold. Your fingers adjust. Your eyes adjust. Even the screams sound softer, muffled by snow. You begin to dream in silence again. In one dream, you're standing alone in the square, but there are dozens of nooses empty, swaying, waiting. In another, you wake up to find yourself hanging from one of them. You tell no one. Your reputation is stronger than ever. People step aside when you walk by. Children whisper stories. Some say your blade never dulls. Others claim your dog eats the souls of the condemned. Justice, of course, just wants scraps and naps. But the legend keeps growing. You get another letter. Different handwriting this time. Someone in the city wants your services, special case, well paid. You don't even open it. Just drop it into the fire and watch the flames consume the offer like all the others. Because here's the truth. Winter is not the hardest season because of what it takes from others. It's what it takes from you. Piece by piece, day by day, rope burn, frostbite, guilt. You become quieter. Even the guards notice. One asks if you're all right. You tell him, I'm still breathing. He nods like that's a good answer. It isn't. You spend more time alone, walking through frozen fields, watching the blackbirds pick seeds from the frost, listening to the eerie silence between execution days. You try to count your mistakes. Try to remember the names of the ones who begged, the ones who laughed, the ones who cried for mothers who never came. You try to forget the ones who said nothing, but they're the hardest to forget. Still, the work doesn't stop. Even as snow covers the square and icicles hang from the gallows like crystal knives, they still call for you, still need you, still expect you. And you go, because that's what you do. That's who you are now. Executioner. Winter or not. The thaw creeps in without fanfare. One morning, the snow's still there, stubborn in patches. But the next, it's water puddled around the gallows, soaking the straw, streaking the dirt paths in long brown scars. Everything smells like rot and wet rope. You always dread this part. Spring doesn't clean the slate, it exposes it. All the blood you thought had vanished under snow? It's back. Everything that died is coming back up through the earth, reminding you it never really left. And of course, with the melt comes the mud. So much mud. The prisoners track it into the square. The guards slip in it. Once you nearly lose your footing mid-sentence, your boots sinking into the muck as you try to recite the crime of a young man whose only real sin was stealing candles from a chapel. You're used to it now. The odd cases. Not the murders or the thieves, but the strange ones. The awkward, gray area crimes that don't fit any neat category. The laws are shifting again. New edicts. Some bishop's cousin got robbed in another town, and now trespassing after curfew is suddenly a hangable offense. You don't ask questions. You ask for names, dates, and weight estimates. The scaffolding is being repaired. Spring's dampness warped the boards. You help nail down the new planks, check the trapdoor, test the beam with a hanging stone. It creaks like an old ship. Reliable, but tired. You understand it. Today, the name in your ledger is a woman. Middle-aged. Accused of poisoning her neighbor's pig. Seriously. You reread the crime twice. Turns out the pig died, the neighbor blamed her, and the local magistrate sided with the neighbor. Witchcraft, someone muttered. You raise an eyebrow. By now, you've seen this pattern before: a lone woman, an unexplained death, and a village looking for somewhere to point its fear. She doesn't resist. When they bring her in, she walks barefoot, robes stained with herbs and roots. You wonder if she really did it. Poison's easy. Pigs eat everything. But the bigger issue is the word they whisper when she passes, witch. Historically speaking, this isn't the height of the witch trials, that madness comes later, but accusations still fly. Especially in spring. New growth. New fears. The old woman who knows how to treat fevers suddenly becomes a threat. Historians still argue whether the early executions of alleged witches were really about religion or simply about social control. Was it misogyny, panic, politics? Maybe a cocktail of all three. You're not here to debate. You're here to tie knots. At the square, a new feature's been added. A platform with stairs for the bishop. He wants to give speeches now. You sigh. He climbs up in his velvet robes and starts shouting about sin, temptation, and how the devil walks among you. You try to tune it out, focusing on the feel of the hemp in your hands, the slack of the noose. The woman meets your eyes. She doesn't blink. Just says, "You'll be next eventually." You pause for half a breath. Not from fear. From familiarity. You've heard that sentence before. Variations of it. From priests. From paupers. From children once. Always right before the end. The bishop finishes. The signal is given. You drop her clean. The rope jerks. Her feet dangle. Her eyes stay open. Then it's over. The townspeople shuffle home. Some cross themselves. One throws a clump of dirt at the base of the gallows and curses. You stay behind just a little longer. The mud's deeper now. Your boots are filthy. Quirky fact, some regions during this period required executioners to bury the dead themselves. Not out of respect, but because no one else wanted to touch the tainted body. You've done that too. Quietly. At dusk. With justice sniffing at the edge of the grave. Tonight, the grave is shallow. The ground's too soft to dig deep. You mark the spot with a plain stone. No name. Just a flat gray slab, half swallowed by the mud. Justice barks once, then lies down beside it. Like he's guarding something. You sit on the grass, damp seeping through your trousers, and feel the weight of it all settle again. The thaw doesn't just bring life back to the land, it wakes things in you too. Memories you thought were frozen start moving again. You remember your first hanging. The sound. The crowd. The strange numbness in your chest. You remember the first time someone begged you to stop. And the time you almost did. You wonder if the earth remembers too. If every tree that blooms nearby drinks in a little of the blood. If the daffodils that sprout around the gallows owe their yellow brightness to a century of buried shame. The next day, you get a message. Another woman. Another accusation. You don't even need to read it. You just sigh, sharpen the axe just in case, and pack your tools. It's spring after all. And business is blooming. The road to the next village is long and uneven. Spring may have softened the soil, but it hasn't smoothed the way. You walk beside the cart, not on it, Justice trotting ahead, sniffing bushes and ignoring birds. The driver's an old man with a twitch in his left eye and a habit of spitting every few minutes. You don't ask his name. He doesn't ask yours. That's the arrangement. The village is smaller than expected, more animals than people, really. Chickens scatter as the cart rattles in. A girl stops picking dandelions to watch you pass. She doesn't wave, just holds the yellow flower like a question. You're here for a burning. You hate burnings. They're messier, crueler, less clean. But it's what was ordered. Witchcraft. Again. This time with added flair. Dancing with demons and raising a dead ox in the moonlight. Very theatrical. Very stupid. Still, here you are. They've already built the pyre. Not even subtle. Logs stacked high, fresh pine branches at the base, probably to make the smoke smell nice for the crowd. There's a post in the center, charred from previous use. The whole thing leans slightly like it's tired of this, too. The condemned is a man this time. Middle-aged, stooped, dressed in burlap and ash. The villagers say he healed a child's fever with a demonic poultice. The child survived, which is suspicious. You meet his eyes. He doesn't look afraid, just exhausted. You know that look. He speaks quietly as you tie him to the post. Do you think fire hurts more when you expect it? You pause. I try not to find out, you answer. That earns a dry laugh. Historians still argue whether burnings were ever the preferred method of execution or just an exceptional punishment used to send a message. Some say it was religious pageantry. Others claim it was logistical. Fire was more available than trained executioners in remote regions. You're not sure what's worse, theater or convenience. As the crowd gathers, someone starts singing. A hymn. Out of tune, but heartfelt. The kind of thing meant to soothe children and scare demons. You find it oddly touching, like wrapping a wound in lace. You light the torch. Your hand doesn't tremble. The flames catch quickly. The pine needles crackle. Smoke coils upward like a dragon stretching. The man doesn't scream at first. Then he does. And it's a scream you'll remember. You always do. Quirky fact, in some parts of Europe, executioners were forbidden from attending church. Not officially excommunicated, just unwelcome. It wasn't about sin, it was superstition. People believed you carried death with you. That even a handshake could curse a harvest. You haven't shaken hands in years. Afterward, the ashes are swept up by boys with sticks. One wears a mask shaped like a dog's face. You don't ask why. The villagers offer you bread and beer. You decline. You walk to the stream and wash your hands. The smoke still clings to your clothes. It always does. No matter how many times you scrub. Some part of it follows you. Hangs behind like a second shadow. You sleep in a stable that night. Justice curls by your feet. The hay smells better than the air. The next morning, the cart's ready. But something new waits with it. A woman in a green hood standing beside the driver. She introduces herself as a chronicler. Wants to interview you. Write about your craft. Preserve the knowledge, she says. You tell her there's nothing to preserve. She smiles anyway and walks beside you for a mile. She asks questions. How long have you done this? What tools do you use? Do you believe in justice? You answer, then don't. She takes notes. Then she says, they'll forget your name, you know. But not your work. You nod. Because that's the truth. You reach the next town in silence. There's already another name in the ledger. Another punishment waiting. A thief this time. A noble's son caught stealing from the tax chest. Not a poor man, not a hungry man. Just greedy. Or maybe bored. He'll be beheaded. You prefer beheadings. Quick. Precise. A blade, a block, a breath. You set up at dawn. Polish the sword. Test the balance. He arrives, hands bound in silk. Still wearing jewelry. He scoffs when he sees you. You're the butcher? He sneers. You don't answer. Later, after it's done, the crowd doesn't cheer. Not because they pity him, but because you were too efficient. No drama. No writhing. Just a clean slice and a soft thump. They wanted a show. You gave them closure. You clean your blade in the fountain. Justice laps up water beside you. The noble's blood dilutes into pink streaks across the marble. You sit on the steps and breathe. The chronicler is gone, but her words linger. They'll forget your name. You wonder if you'll ever have one again. You wake with a cough and the taste of iron in your mouth. It's nothing, probably, just the season changing again. Dust in the lungs. But part of you wonders if it's the ash catching up. Burnt wood, burnt flesh, burnt guilt. It sticks in your throat. A phantom aftertaste you can't quite rinse away. The next few executions pass in a blur. One for forgery, an old man who'd faked a seal to get an extra sack of grain. One for heresy, a quiet lad who said the sun moved around the earth and not the other way. And one for treason, a guard who fell asleep during his shift and let a prisoner escape. None of them scream. Maybe you're just getting used to it. The town square is quieter now. The scaffolding's been reinforced again. Someone painted it red, thinking it would hide the stains. It doesn't. The red just makes them darker, richer. There's a rumor going around that a royal inspector is coming. Apparently, someone's been questioning the number of executions this year. Not out of mercy, oh no, it's about cost. Rope's fray. Axes dull. Wood isn't cheap. And they say too many deaths in one region make the locals nervous. You find this amusing. Now they're worried. You hear the inspector before you see him, boots that don't belong here, crisp and polished. He arrives with scrolls and servants, nostrils flaring like a man trying not to smell his surroundings. You think about offering him a piece of dried meat. Decide against it. He asks to see the ledgers. You hand them over. He flips through with a frown. A bit excessive, don't you think? You shrug. I don't write the names. I just do the rest. He makes a noise somewhere between a grunt and a scoff. Later, he watches you perform a hanging. A standard case, someone caught setting fire to the Lord's barn. No casualties, just wasted hay. Still enough to stretch a neck. The inspector squints as you tie the knot. You use the bowline? He asks, trying to sound knowledgeable. You glance at him. No. It's a hangman's noose. It's specific. He doesn't reply. Afterward, he notes something in a little book. Probably writes competent or problematic. You don't care. He leaves before sunset, robes swishing like they're afraid of dirt. Quirky fact. In some regions, royal inspectors were accompanied by death auditors who reviewed whether each execution was economically justified. That's right, there were entire job titles built around deciding whether your job was worth their budget. You return to your cottage that evening and pour a drink. It's not much, just watered wine, but it numbs the edge. Justice curls at your feet. The fire crackles, and for a second it almost feels normal. Like a life not wrapped in rope and rust. Until the next knock. A messenger, soaked in rain, stands at your door. There's a special case, he says. High profile. You don't answer right away. But the next morning you pack your gear. The town is larger than most. Cobblestones, stained glass chapels, people with too many buttons on their coats. You're shown to the central hall. There's a platform being built, not the gallows kind, but a stage. Curtains and all. This is not going to be a simple job. You're introduced to the condemned. A philosopher. Apparently he'd written a pamphlet. Argued that maybe kings weren't chosen by God, but by accident. Or worse, by popular opinion. You can almost hear the collective gasp echoing through noble corridors. They want him seen. Not just dead, but discredited. So they want you to shave him. Strip him. Parade him. Then hang him slowly. You say no. They blink. You say it again. No, they threaten you with punishment. You laugh. You want me to make him scream? You ask. Then find someone else. You've never refused before. And maybe that's why they let you off with a warning. Or maybe they see it too, this job is fraying you. Pulling threads from the inside out. You leave the town without finishing the job. No one follows. Historians still argue whether executioners ever had moral limits, lines they wouldn't cross. Some say it's romantic nonsense, that the job numbed all feeling. Others suggest there were always moments when even the coldest hands dropped the rope. You found yours. You return home, unsure if you'll be summoned again. Days pass. Then weeks. You don't mind. You tend the garden. Mend Justice's harness. Fix a leak in the roof that's been dripping since winter. You're not free, not really, but for the first time in years, you feel unwatched. Until another letter comes. But this one isn't sealed with a crest. It's handwritten. No official tone. No wax. Just 4 words. Do you remember me? You do. The handwriting is unmistakable. You stare at the letter for a long time, its ink curling like smoke across the page. No name, no location, just that single question. Do you remember me? You'd like to say no. That would be cleaner. But you do. She was 16, maybe 17 the first time you saw her. Too young to be hanged, but the villagers disagreed. She'd sung songs they didn't like, read books they hadn't seen before, owned a cat with 2 different colored eyes. The usual cocktail of suspicion. They wanted her gone. You delayed the sentence. Gave every excuse, weather, equipment, the moon being too bright. But you knew it was inevitable. In the end, it wasn't you who pulled the lever. She escaped the night before her hanging. Disappeared into the hills with her mismatched cat and left behind a town full of embarrassment. You never reported it. You burned the ledger entry. Now she's writing to you. There's a second letter the next week. This one has directions, crude ones, drawn on the back of a herb-stained scrap. Come see the mountains, it says. Bring bread. I miss bread. Justice senses something before you do. He's pacing more. Restless. Maybe it's the tone of the air. Or maybe dogs just know when ghosts start writing letters. You decide to go. It's a long ride. Over fields stitched with mist, past villages too quiet to be real. You travel light, just the essentials, cloak, coin, a bit of dried meat. Your tools stay behind. You won't need them. The path leads up into the hills. Steeper, colder, narrower. Then one morning there she is. Sitting on a stump beside a fire, poking at something in a pan. You brought bread, she says. You nod. You wrote. She grins, older now but still sharp-eyed. Her hair's streaked with silver. The cat, you swear it's the same one, curls around her feet like it owns the mountain. You share a meal. Mostly silence. Just the fire popping and the wind nudging the trees. Then she says, do you regret it? You know what she means. Not letting her die. Not the job. All of it. You chew slowly before answering. Some of it. She nods. Same. The mountain air does something to your chest, loosens it. You talk more than you expect. Tell her about the chronicler. The inspector. The noble's son with silk-wrapped hands. She listens like it matters. Then she tells you about her life up here, quiet mostly. Collecting herbs. Teaching children how to find mushrooms that don't kill you. Writing the occasional letter to see if you'd still come. You stay for 3 days. On the 4th morning, she's gone. Just a note this time, you're almost done. You think she's right. Quirky fact, there were whispers that some executioners in Europe kept secret lists, names of people they refused to kill. No records, of course. Just mental notes, passed down from mentor to apprentice like recipes. Quiet legacies of mercy. You wonder if your name's on anyone's list. You return home changed, but not clean. You'll never be clean. The stains aren't just on your apron. They're in your voice. Your breath. Your bones. But something has shifted. You begin to carve wood in your spare time. Birds, mostly. You leave them on fence posts near the edge of town. No one knows who makes them, but they disappear fast. You adopt a second dog. Justice isn't thrilled, but he adjusts. The new one's smaller. Loud. Likes to sleep under your bed. One morning, there's another knock. A young boy stands there, holding a note sealed with wax. They want you back, he says. Big case. You take the note, but you don't open it. Instead, you hand him one of your carved birds. Take this instead. He stares at it, confused. They'll understand, you add. He runs off, whistling. You sit by the window, hands wrapped around a mug of something warm, and listen to the birds that aren't made of wood. They sing louder now, or maybe you just hear them better. Historians still argue whether executioners ever got to retire. Some think the title followed you to the grave. Others say you could slip away, vanish into obscurity, let your blade rust in peace. You don't know which is true, but you do know you're not going back. Let someone else sharpen the axe this time. You've done enough. That night, you light a candle. Not for ceremony. Just because the dark feels different now. Less like a threat. More like a curtain closing. And behind it? Maybe something quieter. Maybe sleep. You don't dream that night. Or maybe you do, but it's all soft shapes and muffled sounds, nothing sharp, nothing that echoes. Just drifting. Like a leaf on a lazy stream, spiraling through half-light. The next morning, you wake with a strange calm. It's early. Mist clings to the grass like silk and the cottage feels warmer than it should. Justice is still asleep, curled tight beside the hearth. Even the little dog's snoring is subdued, as though the world's finally remembered how to be quiet. You stretch slowly. Nothing hurts. Not your shoulders, not your knees. Not even the place in your ribs that used to crackle in the cold. You put on water for tea. Outside, the village stirs gently. No shouts. No carts clattering down cobbled streets. No church bells ringing like their warning of fire. Just the cluck of chickens and the occasional cough of a baker hauling loaves to rise. You take your tea out to the porch. Sip it while the sun peeks up over the trees. It's in moments like this that you begin to wonder. Was this ever supposed to be your life? Did someone pick you for this role? Or did the world just need a pair of steady hands and didn't care what kind of soul came attached? You remember the first time you held the axe. How it felt heavier than you expected, like it already knew where it was going. You were younger then, hopeful maybe, or just stubborn. You thought you could control it, make justice neat, clean, almost honorable. You were wrong, but you also weren't completely right, because somewhere along the way you learned things. That guilt is quieter than people think. That the dead are easier to face than the living. That kindness, once you've seen how cruel people can be, is both more precious and more dangerous than anything else in the world. Quirky fact. Some executioners were believed to carry protective charms, iron rings, braided cords, even bones from the gallows, to ward off spirits or absorb death energy. Superstition? Maybe. Or maybe it was just their way of asking the universe to go easy on them. You never carried charms. But you did start talking to birds. And lately they talk back. You spend the afternoon walking the perimeter of your little patch of world. The fence needs mending again. A few stones from the garden wall have toppled. The rain does that. Time does that. You fix what you can. At dusk, a cart rolls up. Not official. Not urgent. Just a peddler with clay pots and a toothless grin. You trade a carved dog for a spool of thread. He doesn't ask who you are. And you don't offer. That night, you write a letter. It's short. No signature. Just, I hope your cat is still smug. You tuck it into a pouch and give it to a passing traveler headed north. He promises to deliver it. Whether he does or not, you're not sure it matters. You've said what you needed to say. Historians still argue whether executioners ever made peace with their legacy. Some say they died bitter, alone, scorned even in the afterlife. Others whisper about those who vanished into new lives, innkeepers, healers, monks with hands that had once tied knots but now tended wounds. You think about that sometimes. Not out of regret. Out of wonder. You close the shutters before bed. There's no letter waiting. No summons. No knock. Just the wind brushing the trees and the quiet creak of floorboards settling into stillness. For once, you don't feel watched. For once, sleep comes quickly. Wind down, 300 words. And now, as the world around you fades into shadow and hush, you feel your body growing heavier with each breath. The air is cooler now, soft against your skin, and the rhythm of the night begins to lull you into that peaceful space between wakefulness and dreams. The fire crackles low, its embers casting warm, flickering light across the floor. Outside, the leaves rustle like lullabies, and the stars blink overhead, steady, ancient, unbothered by all the noise we've made in history's long, tangled story. You've walked a strange path tonight, through gallows and guilt, through moments of cruelty and small sparks of compassion. You've stood in uncomfortable shoes, shouldered a role that few would envy, And now, gently, you're stepping away. Let the weight fall from your shoulders now. Let the rope loosen, the axe lower, the names in the ledger blur. This world you carried, it doesn't need you tonight. Instead, take in the stillness around you, the soft hum of nothing, the way even the silence has shape and texture. Let your breath slow, in and out, deeper now. No need to sort the facts or remember the faces. No need to worry what happens next. You're safe here, wrapped in quiet, with time enough to rest. And maybe, just maybe, the next story you find yourself in will be a gentler one. One with fewer ropes and more birds. Good night, sleep tight, and I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams.